Let's start with a meditation. And some of the sweetest meditations I've ever had were when there was a teacher offering guidance that I didn't like. And if that's you today, then go ahead and head off to Samadhi land. And if you'd like, I will also offer some guidance. And before we settle too deep into stillness, I would like us to try something today. So hold your hands like this and just rub your fingernails together. And you might hear a little sound. I'll hold it near the speaker so you can hear it. And after a few breaths, you can stop and just see if you feel any tingling sensations in your fingertips. Maybe some warmth that wasn't there a few moments ago. And if you do not feel this, one reason could be that maybe you've been very tired, very stressed lately, or maybe you've been sick recently. This does happen once in a while. People just don't feel it. And if you do feel it, I would suggest that this is your life force energy that was just activated in your fingertips. So we're going to be exploring this sensation of life force energy today in our meditation. And if you still feel that tingling and if it's distracting to you, you can kind of rub your fingertips and just take off that excess energy. You can also store it in your dantian, your energy reservoir, which is the soft part of the belly right under the belly button. And maybe that will help it quiet down from your fingertips. So there's a couple ways of activating this life force energy, this chi in our body. One way is through motion. So that's why the practice of qigong can be very helpful in understanding how to work with energy. The other way is to direct where the energy goes with your mind. And wherever the mind goes, the energy will follow. So there are some Tai Chi masters who can, by staring and focusing on one half of their hand, raise that part of their hand by 15 degrees hotter than the other side. That's one way of directing qi. So let's try that by focusing on the tip of the nose, where breath is coming in and out. Guiding the attention to that tip of the nose with a sense of curiosity, play. And maybe after these few moments, you sense that vibration, tingling at the tip of the nose, that life force energy guided there by the mind. And if at any point in this meditation things stop making sense or you just don't feel it, that's perfectly fine. And also, what if it does? And start transitioning the mind and transitioning the life force energy from the tip of the nose to the brow line, the forehead. Almost like you're breathing in and out from the pores of that forehead. For some people, it might help to just lightly trace a fingertip across that forehead to show the body where you want the energy to go. Maybe for some of you, that forehead is already tingling and active with chi. And this sensation is so helpful for me to recognize because whenever I'm in my analytical thinking mind, the part of my mind that does the taxes or puts together a shopping list for the grocery store, this is where my chi goes. So similarly, if you find yourself thinking very hard, if you're wondering, am I in my thinking mind or in the timeless, boundless, pure consciousness part of my mind, you can pause for a moment, sense and feel where the energy is in your body. Every body is different, of course, and possibly if you feel all your energy collected in your forehead, very possibly you are in the conventional thinking mind. Now bring the mind, the awareness to the base of the skull, where the head meets the neck. For some people, maybe it helps to just touch that point with the tip of one finger. Tell the mind where you want it to go. For me, this point is the entryway to my intuition. How does it feel in your body to bring your energy to that point? With every out breath, relaxing that awareness down your back, letting it settle behind you, like it's the back of a very comfortable but still supportive armchair. Let that energy settle just slightly behind you, slightly around you. Notice how this feels in the body. If all this is making any sense at all, then I would suggest that you are in the witness, observing part of the mind. This is something we can feel in the body. Maybe the legs feel a little heavier than usual. The arms a little heavier. Shoulders settled away from the ears. And if you like, you can bring up some recent instance of stress, of dukkha, keeping that awareness slightly behind your body, while also bringing up that feeling or that memory at the same time. Not to solve it or rationalize it, but just to watch it, observe it. Soften and open toward it. If a feeling arises in the body, let it arise. Checking in with where the energy is in your body. Is it still somewhere behind you? If it has shifted to the front of the head, the forehead, can you melt it back again? And if you have been watching some instance of dukkha, has it changed? Has it shifted into something else? Not through striving, but only through witnessing. Maybe it's yielded into peace in the body, peace in the mind. Maybe it revealed itself to be some insight. Or maybe all of this is just complete nonsense to you, and none of it has made any sense at all, and all of that is perfectly fine too. But if it has made sense, then what if what we've been doing for the past few minutes is all we really need to do to cross that finish line of Nibbana? Because each time we step back and observe, we can loosen or entirely let go of some attachment. And if we keep letting go of our attachments one by one, by one, by one, by one, by one, then by simple math, one day there will be no attachments left at all. What if it really is just that simple? It's always such a joy to practice with everybody here. All right, time for the talk, I guess. I will be very curious, by the way, to hear how people found that meditation when we get to the discussion part. Not that anyone is obligated to share ever. All right, let's continue our exploration of how to work with this funny little thinking mind that we've all got to deal with from now until parinibbana. And I want to start today with a sip of water. All right. And then I do want to start today, this talk, by talking about how a lot of suffering and frustration can come from a mismatch in what our mind is able to do in that moment because of how much energy it has and what we are asking it to do. So, some examples. Uh, okay, I used to listen to a lot of Dhamma chats from Ajahn Suchart. He said this thing about working with sleepiness that, wow, was so huge for me, and I would love to share it with all of you. So he said that when practitioners are sleepy, when people are sleepy, oftentimes they get very grumpy. And it's because their mind is just not really capable of going at its usual speed, right? When we haven't been resting enough, when we're all very sleepy, the mind, I mean, I can definitely feel it. The mind gets very groggy, very slow. And then a lot of frustration can arise when we keep asking it to perform at its normal levels. So this discrepancy is where the frustration can arise in everyday life and when we're meditating. We shake the little thinking mind by the shoulders and say, come on, why can't you concentrate? But it's because it just doesn't have enough energy. So I started practicing with this. And in everyday life, I realized that when I was really sleepy, I could just lower my expectations for what that thinking mind can do and just let it be slow, let it be groggy, and start canceling some plans if I can. And if I couldn't cancel those plans, then go about them just at a much slower pace. And I could also notify the people around me, whether it was my partner or my colleagues. I feel very lucky to work with a pretty healthy team where I can start meetings by just letting people know, like, I didn't sleep well last night. I might need you to repeat something today. And they always receive it very well. And half the time when I say that, then all of a sudden I take so much pressure off of my thinking mind that I don't really need them to repeat anything at all. And the other half of the time, they are talking at their usual speed, expecting usual performance out of me, and I just stare blankly at them for a moment. And I blink a couple times and I say, you are going to have to say that again for me. Remember, I'm very sleepy. And everybody just chuckles and says it again a little more slowly for me. And what a delight that has been to just take so much pressure off of my little thinking mind, especially when it's sleepy and tired. And then, of course, when it comes to meditation, sometimes it is really nice just to take a little nap instead, just a 10-15 minute nap before going into meditation. And then other times when I just feel like practicing in a different way, or maybe a nap isn't available to me, then I just go into this. There's a kind of sleep, yogic sleep, that can happen where the body is upright and part of the mind is still awake, but the brain is sleeping. And the way I enter that, and all I have to do is do that for like 10-15 minutes, and then I'm ready to meditate for as long as I want afterward. But the way I enter that sleep is in the meditation posture, just assuring the mind that it can rest, find a restful place. And then in a few breaths, it can slip into that yogic sleep while my body is still upright. And it doesn't work 100% of the time. 9 out of 10 times maybe it works, but there's still 1 out of 10 times where my head will start nodding. And then that to me means that my body really does need a nap, and I'll excuse myself. And I think for a lot of people, sleepiness and tiredness can arise just because the mind and the body have been doing a lot. And when we come to the cushion, we finally drop into our bodies and drop into our minds. And finally, the body is allowed to be tired, or the mind is allowed to be tired, and then sleepiness can arise. But actually, sometimes when the mind has been a little overstimulated, and then I sit in meditation, then because the mind is resisting that tired feeling, or the body is resisting that tired feeling, then instead it just keeps running around because it doesn't want to feel that discomfort. So instead, restlessness can arise because the body is tired or the mind is tired. And when that happens, I notice that happening. And when I say notice, all I mean is just dropping into that witness part of the mind and seeing what the mind is actually doing. When I notice the mind is running around like that, then I remind it that actually the only way through that discomfort is by feeling it. That rest and peace, like real peace, not just the appearance of it, is on the other side of that discomfort, not by running around or running away from it. So sometimes I will just look my little thinking mind in the eyes and I will say, look, little thinking mind, we have some precious time in our day right now, and we're sitting in meditation. The room is quiet, the body is still, and look, you get to decide. Do you want to meditate right now, or do you want to keep running around? And 9 out of 10 times when I ask that my mind that question, it doesn't answer because it has already slipped into samadhi. And the remaining 1 out of 10 times, it just does want to run around, doesn't it? But when I melt into my body and just let it run around, a lot of times it's because there's some feeling that I haven't yet processed in my body that will, my mind loves fun and play and delight. All right. So it's like running around because it's in so much delight. And actually, when I let it express that delight to me, when I let that delight arise in my body and just feel it, then the mind gets what it needs. And when it's done somersaulting around in delight, then it very naturally settles into stillness. Sometimes the mind is restless because the body has too much energy. It can, one time I went on retreat and usually I drink tea or decaf, but at Spirit Rock they have really nice blue bottle coffee and I decided to try full caffeinated coffee on retreat. I don't know why. But trying full calf coffee for the first time in months or years, I suddenly just like sprang to full activation mode and I had so much energy. And usually after breakfast, I like to sit there and watch the breeze just ripple through the tall grass there. But when I tried to sit still that day, I was like a firecracker from that coffee. And my mind could not settle, body could not settle. And what I actually had to do was, you can call it walking meditation if you want, but really what I had to do was just walk up and down that steep hill several dozens of times to work off that caffeine, work off that extra energy, and only then could my body and mind settle again. And I noticed this too when we started eating meat again recently. And I really had to watch how much meat I was eating because if I ate more than just a little bit, then my body had so much energy and my mind had so much energy that I couldn't really settle easily into meditation. And sometimes the mind is restless and anxious because it has been surrounded by restless and anxious conditions. I remember I used to have this job where everybody around me was just in chaos and blaming mode all the time. And these, for me, are conditions to cause a lot of anxiety in the body and the mind. And at the time, I thought maybe I just have insomnia because I'm aging. And I hear this happens to people when they age. They can no longer sleep through the night. And I took many supplements to help guide me into sleep at night, only to wake up for hours in the early morning. But when I left that job, all of a sudden I didn't need any supplements to sleep through the night anymore. So sometimes it really helps to make a change in our environment, whether it's changing a job or not taking in so much news or being a little more selective about who we spend time with. Anxious conditions will cause an anxious mind, even for an arhat, right? Like just like James shared last week, even for Ajahn Sumedho, when he consumes a lot of news, these are anxious conditions. This will cause activity, anxious activity in the mind. And also, I've discovered, as I understand more and more the autistic nature of my mind, a lot of what I thought was anxiety that caused the insomnia in the early hours of the morning was actually just a brain that had been overstimulated. And whenever the brain is overstimulated through just a lot of physical activity, mental activity, social, emotional, spiritual activity, whenever it crosses a certain threshold, then I will be up for hours in the middle of the night. And that is just the nature of my brain. Sometimes people, when they sit for meditation, and I remember this happening too, but the mind will be in doubt of, am I doing this right? For example, is this samadhi? And for me, that is a symptom of the mind and awareness and the life force energy just congealing at the front of the forehead, front of the brain. If I can bring that energy, bring that awareness back, then that really ceases for me. And a lot of times the mind suffers because there is a discrepancy between what the mind believes and what is actually the truth of the way things are. So, for example, I have many, many examples to choose from. It's like I'm standing in front of a buffet line right now. I'm picking which one to verbalize. So many times that I can remember my mind suffering because I didn't want to see the truth. And okay, here's the example that has come to the front of the line. Is I remember I used to have a friend who I loved so much, and she was someone who I would have really gone out of my way to be there for. I cared about so deeply. And I found that despite my best efforts, that that care was not reciprocated. And that became especially apparent when I lived right next door to one of her other friends. And I would see her going to visit this neighbor all the time. And going to visit the neighbor and never ever bothering to say hello to me. And this especially hurt because she lived very far away and I was reaching out all the time. And it just seemed like she could come literally almost to my doorstep, but not even just text me or knock on the door and see if I was there. And this was extremely painful for me at the time. And this this all came to a head one night when they were having a very loud party next door, and I could hear them laughing. I could hear them having an amazing time. And after many, many times of expressing to my friend how much it hurt me that she could come so close and not even see, just check if I was alive, that night, that suffering just grew and grew and grew in my mind. And as I was laying in bed trying to sleep, I couldn't look away from the truth anymore. And the truth really stepped right to the front of my mind. And I heard in her voice the truth of the way things are. And I heard her voice saying, I don't want to be your friend anymore. And it was very painful in the moment, just like the truth can always be painful in the moment. But when it arose that strongly, and I had no choice but to look at it right in the face, what came after the pain was incredible depth of insight that no friend can be grasped onto. Despite how much we might care and how much effort we might put into, despite how beautifully we can get along when we are together, despite how much they might profess to care, despite how much they might profess to have values aligned with my own, ultimately no friend can be grasped onto, no person can be grasped onto. And I felt this opening, this unclenching of attachment. I used to be so precious about my friends. I used to, oh, it was like Gollum in the ring, like all my friends, all my close friends were so precious to me. And I think you can see in the way that I'm expressing how I felt that there was so much selfing and so much of my friend. But ever since that night, I realized that friendship is just the stream that runs through my life, and each person in that stream is like a drop of clear, sparkling water. And whenever I am with a friend, or whenever I'm with any person, they are my friend. And then they enter my life for a time, and then they pass through my life for after that. And that kind of happiness and that kind of friendship has been so much happier, so much more joy, and of course, so much more freedom than the kind of friendship where each person is hoarded like a ring of power. So there's that discrepancy between mind and the truth. And for me, whenever an instance of suffering arises, whenever I drop into that meditative state where my awareness is behind me, my chi is behind me, I'm in that witnessing position. And just as that eternal, boundless witness, I hold that suffering and let it shift and melt into something else. The truth does arise. And I think probably everybody on this call knows everything intellectually, knows everything necessary to go all the way to Nibbana intellectually. So now it's about dropping into that witness position and teaching our minds experientially. Learning our own minds, teaching our own minds. Each instance of suffering can also be an instance of loving and letting go. And like I said in the meditation, what if it really is just the simple math of one by one by one attachment at a time, loving and letting go, all the way to Nibbana. And, when we learn our conventional mind more and more, we can also learn the conditions under which it excels and under which practice just kicks it up a notch and goes even faster and it's even more fun. So I'll give a couple examples. My chitta is very playful. It loves to play. It loves to tinker. My chitta loves the energy of like escape rooms and riddles and brain teasers. Uh, it just loves so much to play. So when I here's actually another example. It loves games so much so that in the summer I've spoken about before, there was a summer when Kyle and I were learning how to resolve conflict in a much more skillful way between the two of us. And Kyle had noted to me that it seemed like I didn't like to apologize. And Kyle was always the first one to apologize. And I consulted our track record and I noticed that this was definitely true. And this was something I did not wish any longer to be true. So, knowing the personality of my thinking mind and knowing how much it loves games, I told my little thinking mind, we're going to play a little game now. And whenever a conflict arises between you and Kyle, if you can be the one who apologizes first, then you win the game. And all of a sudden, every time we argued, I apologized first. And then Kyle gave me the note. Kyle, being the very smart person that they are, they said, I noticed you've been apologizing, but I also noticed it doesn't seem like you mean it. So then I had to add an amendment to the rules of this game to my thinking mind. And I told the thinking mind, okay, to win the game, now you have to apologize first and you have to mean it. And apologies have become, compared to then, much more easy for me to express. And I will admit that when I apologize first and I mean it, there is still a little corner of my thinking mind that goes, yes, I won the game. So when we know our own minds, just like when I was a classroom teacher, there were some students who really benefited from having music and studying to music. And there were some students who really benefited from total silence. And when they studied for a big test with total silence, that's when they actually were the most successful. So when we learn our own minds, then we can also understand what conditions we can input into our mind and input into our environment so that we can have the best progress toward nirvana. But yes, knowing how much my mind loves games, loves riddles, and especially the thing that loves about games and riddles and brain teasers and escape rooms is after all of the tinkering, that moment of like, aha, I got it. I solved it. My brain and my chitta, my mind loves that moment. So when I regard that practice that we've been practicing this morning of dropping into the witnessing mind and just watching an instance of suffering and then having it melt into insight or peace, then I would really teach my mind that within every instance of suffering, there is that fun little reward of, aha, I got it. I got the insight. I got the peace. I made it through that suffering and got out the other side. And when my mind understood that in every instance of suffering, there is that fun, super fun moment, then it started becoming very gleeful at suffering. Because it also knew that within every suffering, it was a game basically to play, and that there was that fun moment at the end. And then, boy, did my practice, it was like stepping on the gas of my practice. So if you know what makes your mind successful, and not successful in a worldly way, of course, but successful in a way where it really wants to practice and falls more deeply in love with practice, then you can teach your mind and regard practice in that way, where your mind is excited to practice. So here's some more examples. I think that for some people, they love Dhamma practice because the more we practice, the more of a sustained, unshakable sense of peace that we get. And that if that is you, then you can teach your mind that actually the quickest and most efficient way through an instance of suffering is to face it. And that actually every instance of suffering, although at first it may appear like some monster, some Godzilla towering toward us, when we face it in that way, we discover that it really is smoke and mirrors made of soap bubbles and empty. Or maybe you have a mind that really excels when it's practicing out of love for other people. And then you can teach your mind that actually the best way to be there for someone else is to sink deeper and deeper into the wisdom that we can access when we practice in this way. And there was a time when I realized that, there's that couple in the suttas. There's a story of a couple who asked the Buddha, like, we want to be reborn forever together as a couple, so how can we do that? And the Buddha says, well, you have to have like the same degree of moral virtue, the same degree of wisdom, the same everything, and then you can be reborn together. And then there was a point in practice when I realized that there's absolutely no way that I can guarantee that Kyle and I are reborn together, because there's no way I can guarantee that we have the same sila, same panya, same everything. So actually, the best thing I can do for my partner, who I love the most in the world, is to step on the gas of practice, because I wish to condition their mind to be loved unconditionally, so that even if we are not born exactly together in future lifetimes, then their mind will know what it's like to be so loved, and perhaps that is what will guarantee them the best possible birth, whether it is with me or not. And real, true, unconditional love, I think, occurs with Nibbana. So you can also teach your mind in that way. If you know that your chitta excels the most when it is practicing for someone else, then you can teach your mind in that way. That actually the best way to love someone else is to practice well ourselves. And some good questions to ask yourself to discover what is the personality of your mind and what makes it the most excited to practice are to reflect on the times when you have really gone above and beyond, when nobody even asked you to. What was your mind doing in those times? What motivated it to go so far, go so far into the distance, even when nobody asked? And if you start recognizing patterns between all those instances, then maybe that is what makes your mind most excited to practice. And then you can cause those conditions for yourself. And it really is different for all of us. For Ajahn Suchart, for example, he loved practicing with fasting from his autobiography. But then I read Meichi Gao's autobiography or biography, and she said, yeah, fasting really didn't really do it for me. She loved not sleeping. And I'll tell you what, not sleeping does not do it for me, okay? Let's find the conditions that will fuel our practice the most. All the way to Nibbana and beyond. All the way to Parinibbana. All right. May we practice well, as always. And I'm very curious to hear what you all think. All right, Nora.
I we haven't met. My name is Nora, and thank you so much for the beautiful guided meditation and the beautiful talk. There's a lot of things that you've given me, so thank you. One of the things that just strikes me, though, is I think I have this tendency that maybe I've learned over the years, or it's my natural training as a female or something. Like I loved how you're like, okay, first do this and then do that, and then you're gonna do it like this, and then there's like a sense of agency that I hear from you and feel from you. Like I can do this. I can learn how my mind goes. I can put my energy here and there. And I think there's a part of me that feels it's like a current in my mind stream. And actually, I feel very tender saying that, like of oh, I just sort of have to accept what is, and there is I don't get to have that agency. And anyway, so lots of things that I could talk about. Very grateful, but I just thought that I would share that tender insight. So thank you
Mm,
so
thank you. That's very sweet. Yeah, practice is the balance of agency and letting go, like you just said. A practice of the balance between agency and like, oh, it just is what is. And actually, I've been thinking lately that the practice that I've been bringing to that for a long time, and it's worked really well for me, is that if what I want is a wholesome thing and I can go about it getting that wholesome thing in a wholesome way, then I would just go as far as I can in that pursuit. And I'm using these words in quotations because it's not like the striving of the way I used to study for final exams. It's like a curious and playful teasing at the thread of Dhamma practice. But if the whole it's a wholesome desire and wholesome means, then I would just go for it as far as I can. And then at a certain point, just because of the nature of the world, then I cannot go for it anymore. And at that point, then the letting go is very rich for me. And for me, it's like a earning trust with my thinking mind that I'm going to do what I can for it. And for me, the thinking mind, when it knows that it's being taken care of in that way, there's a lot of letting go of attachment. All right, let's go to Adrian's comments in the chat. Adrian said, I really appreciated the meditation, found the moving of energy to the back and behind so useful, wonderful. And noticing the energy sitting at the front of the head and how it's attached to thinking is right on. So easy to not notice because it's there so often. Yes, in our daily life, in the modern world, it is so often demanded to be right at the front. And the people I have found, the people who are most successful in the definition of success in the modern world, um, tend to be not, how do I want to say this kindly? But I would not look to them for meditation instruction. And if nothing else, then I wish you all a wonderful weekend. It was so nice to spend this time together, and I'll see you all next time.
Thank you very much, Grace.
Yeah, you're welcome.